Hello, welcome to this piano Pandemicitivities, and today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to have a book review. Why not? We're all in quarantine or some level of limited activity, and it's a good time to read books. So I would like to present some books that I've been reading, particularly as relates to improvisation, but also music making generally. So, the book today is Child Composers in the Old Conservatories by Robert Gjerdingen. It's a new book. It's just out in the last few months. And I just finished it, really, truly enjoyed it. Let me say a few things about it. First of all, Gjerdingen is an academic, and he's best known for Music in the Galant Style, Oxford University Press, which where he put forth schemata theory, and that's kind of the, really the central book in schemata theory. If you've learned about Romanescas and printers and indugios and quiescenzas and stuff, that's really where he laid down that stuff. This is a less technical book, but not any less deep. The things that are unique about it, one, it's actually like a beautiful coffee table book, which is unusual for an academic book. It's done on like nice glossy paper with lots of color pictures. And this is extremely unusual for an academic book. I read that there was a special grant to cover the cost of that because certainly doing a normal academic book with Oxford, they absolutely would not spring for glossy colored pictures. So it's quite delightful just to peruse, and it's a little bit less dusty than some academic books. Also, there are YouTube audio samples frequently referenced throughout, and you can get to those very, very easily. Who's it for? Well, it's for anyone who's interested in this topic. Non-professionals could read it, especially avid music amateurs could get through it. Perhaps skipping some sections where he goes really deeply into intervals and music analysis, and there are lots of C clefs, for example, the old clefs, alto and tenor and soprano clef and so on, that you have to deal with when you get into old music. But nevertheless, it reads like a great story. There's a lot of fun anecdotes. Gjerdingen himself, I think, is just interested in things that are interesting and fun, doesn't delight in endlessly spinning out, boring details. So, he's his own best critic, I think. So what does he do? It's a comprehensive picture of a Neapolitan education from the 18th century into the 19th century. What was going on in these conservatories in Naples that gave rise to this astonishing musicianship that eventually affected Mozart, and it affected Handel, and it affected Chopin even. For example, Furno, the Parlamento teacher, his student was Bellini, and it was Bellini's operas that gave Chopin a lot of his ideas for melodic sound. So, so much stuff just goes back to the Neapolitan schools, those four little conservatories. So it's a picture of life, daily life, and what they studied and how it was organized and who the people were and what they would do at 8 o'clock in the morning and why their system worked so well, why it produced such incredibly fluent musicians, with focus on Parlamento, of course, solfege, intablatura, dispositions, and on from there. What is maybe most, I've never read before, I've heard of this, but I've never actually seen anyone lay it out in print. What is maybe most new about it is the strong connections from the Neapolitan conservatories to the Paris Conservatory. So there are specific people, Cherubini and Choron in particular, but others, who brought the Neapolitan ideas and used those as the founding principles of the Paris Conservatory, and how those show up, for example, in the various contests. And then he shows, there's a French version of Parlamento that was going on for decades and decades, all the way up to Debussy. And he actually shows how Debussy was doing very Parlamento-like work, while he was a student there. So this is an extremely interesting story, and these connections are fascinating. He does not go into improvisation per se that much. He talks about the educational systems, and he's more focusing on composition because that leaves a paper trail. You can go find exercises and assignments and examples of this kind of thing, whereas you can't find them about improvisation. So he does not exactly speak specifically about improvisation, but he shows this kind of comprehensive educational foundation that allowed people to become good improvisers. Okay, it's not a book that says here's how to improvise. You're not actually going to learn to improvise from this book. But if you are learning improvisation elsewhere, it will give you some really, really cool background. There are many sources to follow up on, interesting names, manuscripts, books, people that I never heard of that did interesting things that I want to know about. The YouTube audio is all MIDI. It's all computer generated, so it sounds a little bit cheesy, but the cost of actually getting people together and recording live would have been absolutely ridiculous. So that isn't a criticism. And you can hear adequately what's going on when you listen to the YouTube videos. So highly recommend it for all of you who may be interested in improvisation. If you do want to learn actually to improvise, to put your hands on the keyboard and make original music, please check out Improv Planet, linked in the description below, where we have the world's largest collection of video tutorial in historic keyboard improvisation. So, Child Composers in the Old Conservatories, highly recommended, and I think it's going to be an important book that will have a strong influence on our field. Ciao.